we feeling this morning? Woo! That was super loud, right into the mic. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about this morning is the data behind DevOps and making the case for awesome. So the reason I want to talk about this is, as Lars mentioned, I was a sysadmin for a long time, I was a software engineer, and then I was a hardware engineer. I did it all because I just kept wanting to fix things. And then I would go into my manager because things are broken. Again, who's had that happen, right? Things break, right? And I'd be like, okay, so I've got this really great idea. This team over there tried this thing and it was amazing. And my manager would be like, cool story, but we're not that team. That's not going to work. I'd be like, oh, that's the worst. So I decided to go get a PhD because I wanted to figure out which things were going to work for everybody. And so that's what I decided to go study. And in part, things were made so much worse by this guy. So Nicholas Carr decides to write this paper and say IT doesn't matter. The problem is he doesn't just say IT doesn't matter. The title of the paper in Harvard Business Review is IT doesn't matter. Every executive in the world reads Harvard Business Review. So this sucks. We can just go home now. We're done. We're over. Well, this is in 2003, right? And it's ugh. All the managers are like, sweet, I no longer need to invest in technology, right? We can go back to just working in the corner in the dusty basement, right? This was every IT job I ever had. Anybody else? Right? We're just done. So this is what we're going to talk about today, is that technology does matter. Times have changed. Technology has changed. DevOps is good for organizations, and it's good for technology. But, what drives this change? Why is it different? Because Nicholas Carr had a point? So that sucks. So here's the thing. So Nicholas Carr's paper was written and published in 2003, which means it was based on data in the 80s and the 90s. Well, I'm not going to ask. Who has a friend who knows someone who was working in technology in the 80s and 90s? Right? Okay. Somebody had friends that were around back then. So the way technology was done back then is you would spend money on technology and check a box and you were done. Right? Or some companies maybe allegedly still do IT this way, technology this way. So the problem is that you would buy a server, throw it in a closet, and you were done. Give it really pretty uplighting. These are Facebook servers. I don't know why you need to give it really pretty fashion mood lighting. It's fine. Yes. The problem is that your competitor could do the exact same thing, right? I buy a server, I throw it in the closet, it's lovely. My competitor can buy the exact same server or a competitor's server and do the exact same thing. Or we can do hard things, right? I can buy an ERP system and then be done with it or, customize it for the next 10 years. But so can my competitor. That was the problem. That's the challenge, is that technology became something that we did that our competitors could do the exact same thing of. It was the thing that we did that we should not be doing tasks of by hand, right? Don't do accounting by hand because that's stupid because computers do that stuff faster. Don't do HR tracking by hand because computers do that faster. Don't do calculations by hand because computers do that faster. And so we were doing the computing and throwing it in a closet and then ignoring it, except paying people to keep the computers up. And then it just stopped, and we ignored it for the next 10 or 20 years. Until there were a handful of companies that started reporting, allegedly, that they were getting money out of it. And we were like, no, you're not. That's adorable. No one makes money off of computers. And then more companies started saying they were making money off of computers, and we were like, that's funny. We keep hearing this story. No, you're not. And then more companies were like, we're making money off of computers. And we're like, okay, something's happening. And we noticed that there was this trend. And it happened if they were doing the same three things. And it was like automating a thing, which is important because we're talking about technology. And they were redoing their processes, right? So they were like pulling from lean and agile stuff. And there was this change in culture where like the devs and the tests and the ops were all talking to each other, which is crazy, it'll never work. But it was this consistent pattern, and if they did it that way, they were seeing a competitive advantage. And it wasn't just a competitive advantage, but it was sustainable. So it was no longer just a point of parity, which is like you keep up with your competitors, but it was an advantage. And this was where we started seeing companies like Flickr, right? So that seminal, has anyone heard of this talk from 2009 at Velocity from Allspaw and Hammond? Okay, so for those of you that haven't, this was like when the internet lost its mind. So Allspaw and Hammond gave this talk, and it was 10 deploys per day, dev and ops cooperation at Flickr or something like that. And everyone at the conference, like word has it they were split into two camps. And it was either, this is amazing, 10 deploys per day, this is the coolest thing ever. Or it was like, 10 deploys per day, how could you do that to someone? That is awful. Do you hate your operations people? Because like, deploys, that's like the meanest thing in the world. You just lit something on fire, and now you're doing it 10 times a day? You really hate these people. But it was happening consistently, and it was happening a handful of places. And so it started in this web world because that's where you could push consistently. And again, we were noticing it wasn't just a point of parity, right, keeping up, it was a point of distinction. And we realized maybe Nicholas Carr is full of right? We can do more than work in the dusty corner in the basement. This is amazing. Okay, so what I just said, right, notice, DevOps then is technical practices that we're going to call continuous delivery. Because it's a bunch of automation, it's a bunch of testing, it's end-to-end. It's management practices that pull from the lean and agile canon, and it's culture, because we really have to pull so many groups together. And our research shows that this really drives organizational performance and technology performance. And our research over several years shows this. And when I say drives, I mean predicts. Excuse me. This has also been replicated by others, right? So Eric Brynjolfsson at MIT has found this. Several people have found this now. Okay, so let's get down to this. DevOps is good for organizations. So what do I mean by that? I keep saying this like good for organizations thing. This is what I mean. High-performing technology organizations are twice as likely to achieve or exceed commercial goals: productivity, profitability, and market share. Money. People care about money. So when we measure this, we're measuring it based on a number that has been shown to be highly correlated with ROI in both up years and down years. This is held for 4 years in a row. Now, sometimes people come to me and they say, but what if I don't care about money? And sometimes we're like, what do you mean you don't care about money? Who doesn't care about money? There are some people that don't care about money. Now, these people are usually in government, not-for-profit, certain educational institutions. Or what if you care about money, but you also care about other things, right? I care about other things. Corporate social responsibility. We have lots of people who care about money and care about other things. So in this year's State of DevOps report, we also included a measure for not-for-profit measures. So, and we interestingly found the exact same multiplier. We found that high-performing organizations were twice as likely to achieve or exceed non-commercial goals. Effectiveness, efficiency, customer satisfaction, achieving organizational and mission goals. I just realized I've been sitting here talking about all of the research that I've been doing and talking about the State of DevOps report. Let me back this up for 2 seconds. Who here is familiar with the State of DevOps report? Have we heard of this before? Okay, I see some hands. So I've been running the State of DevOps report for the last few years. I've been the lead investigator on this. I have been running this report. It is the largest academically rigorous research or any research of its size run in the world. And what we've been doing is we've been partnering with Puppet, and DORA is myself, Jean Kim, Jez Humble. Are these names ringing a bell? Do we need to do some intros? I hear laughs. We know these names? Fantastic. Okay, that's who DORA is. So DORA is myself, Jean Kim, and Jez Humble. We've partnered up for the last 4 years to really take a rigorous research look into what drives high-performing organizations. And much of this data has not only been presented in the State of DevOps reports, but has also been published in academic peer review. When I started doing this, so DORA is super fun. Before DORA, I was a chef, and before chef, I was actually a researcher in academia. And I really wanted to know what drives high-performing organizations. Again, because before that, I was at IBM, and I kept trying to make my teams better, and my manager was like, well, that's not going to work here. And I was like, ugh. Okay, that's my quick tangent. So, data. Okay. So we have found that so many people have been able to take this information and help get some buy-in at their organizations. So we know that IT performance and helps drive organizational performance. And high-performing technology organizations are twice as likely to achieve or exceed both the money piece of performance and the non-money piece of performance. Now, what else we found is that they see a 50% higher market cap growth over the previous 3 years. Now, there's an asterisk here because I was only able to do this analysis for the companies that volunteered their stock market symbol. So, like, this is only for companies that are big enough to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So this isn't everybody. Excuse me. Now, we also find that DevOps is good for technology. This is how we measured it. So this is a very specific measure, and it's unique for technology delivery. So this is how we measure it. We measure it both in terms of speed and stability, because we find that this is what really drives value for technology organizations, right? Because when we talk about delivering value with technology, we're talking about a couple things. First of all, beating our competitors to market, delighting our customers, keeping up with compliance and regulatory changes, right? Occasionally I'll talk to customers and they're like, I have no competitors. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't need to beat anybody to market. And I was like, well, first of all, that's awesome, right? But we always have to be able to keep up with security challenges or compliance and regulatory changes, right? So we talk about speed and stability. And when we think about that, that speaks to both the dev side of the house, right? Who in here identifies with being like dev side of the house or has ever been a dev? Okay, what about ops? Who refuses to raise their hand? Testers? Business? QA? Who am I missing? Marketing? Executive? Here for the free food? Okay. So when we think about this, devs are often more concerned about speed, right? Introducing new features to code. And so this is deploy frequency and lead time for changes. How often you deploy, or ability to deploy, okay? Also lead time for changes, code commit to code deploy, or in that deployable state. Now, the ops side of the house, we want things to be super stable, right? Don't break my stuff. So for this, we're talking about mean time to recover and change fail rate. The interesting thing is that we found that these move together. High performers get everything. For years, we've been told that in order to be stable, we have to slow down. This isn't true. 4 years in a row, over 23,000 data points. High performers get everything. You can have it all. Okay, this is what we find. High-performing DevOps teams are more agile. Okay, we see more speed here, to the tune of 46x, 46 times more frequent code deployments. This is the difference between multiple times a day and once a week or less. Imagine what you can achieve when you can deploy multiple times a day. Beating competitors to market, delighting your customers, or deploying code to try something out and it doesn't work. You just deploy something new to overwrite it. And it's trivial, it's easy, it's not stressful. I work with Jez Humble, and he says the goal of continuous delivery is to be able to deploy something and have it be supremely boring. Who here deploys code on a weekend? That is not continuous delivery. When you can deploy code on a Tuesday, that is amazing because it just doesn't matter. This is what you can do. Okay, we also see 440 times faster lead time from code commit to code deploy. This allows us to do so many things. This is the difference between less than an hour to more than a week. How long does it take to get your code through your pipeline? It depends on the project. Yes, many times, that's such a great point. Someone said it depends on the project. So many times people get so frustrated at me because they'll be like, well, how do you categorize companies and organizations? I don't. I categorize teams, right? Think about an organization. It depends on the team, it depends on the project. But hopefully, we're on a continuous improvement journey and everyone's working to get better. Okay, high-performing teams are also more reliable. They're 96 times faster, they have 96 times faster MTTR. High performers recover in less than an hour instead of several days. Several days makes me catch my breath just a little bit. Can you imagine being down for several days? Y'all, slow is the new down. Not down is the new down, several days. Can you imagine being down like Christmas time? Someone's head is going to explode. You're also 1/5 as likely that changes will fail. So high performers, their changes fail between 0 and 15% of the time. They're really about that like 2% mark. Low performers, their changes fail between 31 and 45% of the time. This is sort of an eye chart, apologies, but it's also kind of fun. Look at the high performers. They're maximizing everything. Remember how I just said they can have it all? They really do. Deploying on demand, lead time for changes is less than an hour. MTTR is less than an hour, and change fail rate is at the low end of that range. Which also means that if something fails, they can push a fix into production very, very quickly. What does our emergency fix process look like, usually? What's the difference between our regular deploy process and our emergency fix process? What's the difference there? What do we skip? QA and testing. How smart is it to skip testing when we're in emergency state? Not awesome. But when we can push code very, very quickly, that means that if something fails, we can run it through our regular process, which is awesome. And it makes us feel safe because a code push is boring. So, DevOps promises and delivers more throughput, more stability in tandem without the trade-offs that ITIL calls for. Someone here loves ITIL and hates me right now. It's okay. I love you. I love you super hard. ITIL doesn't call for this. ITIL suggests and whispers in dark alleys that we're probably going to have like slowdowns and trade-offs. We don't see it anywhere in the data. We see it nowhere in the data. Okay, so let's talk about what this means. High-performing DevOps teams are more agile. So think about what this means for your own organization or the products you work on or the customers that you consult for. Think about what it means for new content delivery, value and savings around A/B testing, value around speed to market, compliance and regulatory changes, security. Think about the products that you build. Who here builds products that they think suck? What company plans on building products they think are awful? Probably not very many, but guess what? Ronnie Kohavi I think it was Google for years, and he said the original heuristic was only about 50% of the products that they plan on building actually work, and he went to Microsoft, and Microsoft was like, oh, no. We know our customers, we know our features, we know our products so well, and they have a really, really good point. If anyone knows their customers really well, it's Microsoft. He finally convinced Microsoft to let him build out the experimentation platform. Found out only about 1/3 of their incredibly well-designed, these are not experimental features, these were their perfectly well-designed features, only 1/3 of them deliver value. Okay, now think about that code pipeline. If you have a code pipeline that is quick and easy and push a button, and you find out through A/B testing which ones deliver value, if you're only pushing code every 6 months, how long does it take you to pull that code back? 6 months. But if you can push code really, really quickly, you can pull the code out, the features out that are not delivering value. Imagine how powerful that is. And some people are like, oh, it's okay, just leave it in there just in case. Okay, just in case code is technical debt. Or is negative value. It could be driving your customers away. And a good portion of this code they discovered was negative value. Let's not run our customers away. If anything, let's take that 2/3 code and use that time to go sit on a beach. Let's vacation. Okay. High-performing teams are also more reliable. 5 times fewer deploy failures, 96 times faster MTTR. Think about what this means for value and savings around reliability, value and savings around uptime, compliance and security, or just reputation around uptime, compliance, and security. So one of my favorite stories here is Netflix. So I think it was 2010, 2011, Amazon went down, the world went down, Netflix stayed up. And do we know this story? Has anyone heard this? Okay, Amazon went down and the world went down and Netflix stayed up, and there was this big conspiracy theory that Netflix had their own special cache of Amazon servers. No. So what happened is Amazon went down and the world went down and Netflix didn't even notice for 2 hours. Did not notice. 5 hours go by and they finally decide to declare a Sev1 incident. Finally. They had some degraded service, you couldn't rate your favorite show. Turns out they had been building in resiliency. This is where Chaos Monkey came from. You don't choose Chaos Monkey, Chaos Monkey chooses you. Do we know what Chaos Monkey is? This is so great. Chaos Monkey randomly kills instances for you. You just have to deal. By the way, what they don't always tell you, and this has been open sourced. If you ever want to go play with Chaos Monkey, you totally can. You can just download it. By the way, start with Chaos Monkey and test. And then move Chaos Monkey to prod. It'll be fine. Now they have a whole simian army where it will kill entire data centers or entire regions. It's great, like Chaos Kong. It started out as a fluke because they had random things dying. And then they started building in resiliency and they realized this is a really great idea. We should keep doing this. And then Amazon died. And because they had been building this in, they stayed up when the rest of the world went down. It was great. Okay, another example that might be more applicable, although when the S3 bucket went down and the rest of the world went down, right, we all panicked. Now, Heartbleed came out. Everyone knew Heartbleed was out. Everyone knew the fix to Heartbleed. Everybody panicked. The 2 biggest organizations that were hit were the Canadian Tax Agency and the largest hospital in North America. A hospital, y'all. A hospital. They had weeks' notice. One of the executives at the hospital said fixing it as soon as possible or having compensating controls in place days before could have saved this entire breach from occurring in the first place. They couldn't patch it in time. Even though they knew what to fix and how to fix it, they couldn't push the code fast enough. This is real. Excuse me. Okay, so this is what we know to recap so far. Software delivery performance is comprised of throughput and stability, and both are possible without trade-offs. Tech performance contributes to org performance, profitability, productivity, and market share. So, what drives technology and organizational performance? Who here has seen South Park? Okay, help me out here. Step 1, we know software delivery performance. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit. No? Y'all, coffee. Okay. Oh, back up. Okay. The first thing we know that contributes to software delivery performance is continuous delivery. All of the research that we've done, this is kind of a big, giant summation. If you want to improve your ability to develop and deliver quality code with both speed and stability, these are the technical and automation things that you can start with. We know that these drive improvements. So drive, this is predictive. This is more than just correlation. You can pick any one of these, and these will be predictive. So, like, pick your time. Or you can download the last 4 years of the state of DevOps reports and like list them, or the book's coming out in, I think, November. So, use of version control for all production artifacts, test data management, test automation, deployment automation, trunk-based development, continuous integration, shifting left on security, having a loosely coupled architecture, and having empowered teams. Empowered teams means let your people choose the tools they want to use. So, and then I know sometimes people get all nervous about that. It's fine. Come find me later. We can talk about it. Continuous delivery then is predictive of software delivery performance, which in turn is predictive of organizational performance. So one example of this, great story from Yahoo, saying we never had testability before, we have it now, we have this experience, and we know stuff's working and working with controls. They have an automated configuration and deployment of 250,000 nodes. They can deploy up to 140,000 node configurations in 8 hours, and they can patch their entire infrastructure within 6 hours of a patch being made available. Think back to that Heartbleed example, when they were hacked and they just needed to know days before. Here's an example when they can patch the entire infrastructure within 6 hours of a patch being made available. That's powerful. Here's the part that I love. Continuous delivery also makes our work feel better. It has been shown to be predictive of decreasing burnout and decreasing deploy pain. Don't raise your hands. Who here sometimes feels burned out? I totally do, right? We work so hard. We work so hard. We know that improving our technical practices helps make our work better. I shared this story, and at the end of my talk one time, Diego Almeida ran up to me at the end of it and said, "Oh my gosh, I have data for you." And I was like, "Data? I love data." He said, no, this is amazing. We found this at Microsoft. And what they found was that their work-life scores drastically shot up by implementing continuous delivery. Their work-life scores went from 38% to 75%. And he's like, "Okay, but I know you're a statistician, and I know you do research, so I don't know if it's statistically significant." And I'm like, "Trust me, that's statistically significant." Everything got better. And who here has seen this, right? The more we automate, the better our lives get, right? Because we aren't racing around desperately trying to make sure that we've dotted every I and crossed every T. Okay, what else drives performance? Remember before I said that there's technical pieces, there's also lean management pieces, right? We pull from the lean and agile canon. So what does this mean? It means using WIP limits. It means using visual displays, having monitoring tools, integrating customer feedback. By the way, which also means like making sure that we're like building the right thing because we want the money piece. But this is also important because then as dev and ops folks, It gives us visibility so we know that we're building the thing that's meaningful. Working in small batches, doing visual management, having a lightweight change approval process. So in my work with DORA, we sell an assessment tool. By the way, this one, that lightweight change approval process ends up being the constraint probably 90% of the time. And then allowing team experimentation. That one ends up being kind of a big deal also. So a good example here from Etsy. I love this visualization they have. Every time you see a vertical line is a time someone pushed code to production. So you can push code, and then you can take a look at the graph and see if it changed in unexpected ways. So Mike and Betsy, former VP of operations, he always said, if it moves, graph it. Again, lean management practices also make our work feel better. It decreases burnout. It helps make the work predictable. It helps create a cadence. I was telling, I was giving this presentation again. At the end of the presentation, Julia Wester came up to me and she said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is just like the work I had when I was at Turner Sports. I was trying to figure out why my team was working themselves to death and not getting anything done. We implemented WIP limits. It helped us focus on our work. Finishing work feels better than sprinting and feeling like a hero in the moment, because then that's just in the moment. Okay, but wait, there's more. Remember, I talked about how culture was so important, right? Has anyone here heard like culture is the most important thing? Yeah, super, super important. But like, how do you measure it? And like, do we really know it's important? And like, what's going on with this whole culture thing? Here's what we find. Those two pieces that I just talked about, the automation piece, right, that I'm going to call continuous delivery, the lean practices piece, those both predict organizational culture, and I'm going to call it Westrum because org culture can be like 20 million different things. So we measure it a specific way, and identity. And both of those predict organizational performance, and Westrum culture also predicts our ability to develop and deliver software with speed and stability. Okay, so what do I mean by Westrum organizational culture? Well, anytime I talk to someone about DevOps culture and what that means, we usually talk about failing fast and running experiments and like working with novelty and bridging across silos, right? Is this all sounding familiar? So how am I going to instrument this? How am I going to measure it? So we dug into the literature. We found this really interesting research by a sociologist named Ron Westrum. He had developed this typology that was found to be predictive of performance in high-risk, highly complex environments like hospitals and nuclear power. No pressure there, right? If you screw up, bad things happen. Also, it helps predict what happens in those environments when things go wrong. Now, a piece of my dissertation helped argue that technology is very much like those environments because we're also high risk and we're also highly complex. And so as soon as I heard about this typology, I was like, it's perfect. We totally need to use it. So read through this for a second and think about which one might apply to you. So pathological, right? Low cooperation, we shoot the messenger, responsibilities are shirked. We don't want to reach across those silos. Who here might have a friend that works in pathological organizations? Okay, couple hands. Now, in our data, I want to say that about 25% of the respondents tend to fall into that category. Now, the middle one, bureaucratic, rule-oriented, modest cooperation, messengers neglected. If someone brings me bad news, I don't want to hear it. I'm over it. Narrow responsibilities, very, very carefully defined. Bridging's tolerated. Failure leads to justice. Novelty leads to problems. Who here has a friend? Couple friends here? Okay. Now, generative performance-oriented, high cooperation. Messengers are trained. This means I teach people to bring me bad news because I need to surface those problems if I'm ever going to fix whatever goes wrong. Risks are shared. Bridging's encouraged, right? Break down silos. Failure leads to inquiry. Novelty is implemented. Who here has friends or is lucky enough to work in an organization like this? Who has no friends? Right here. I work too much. So the middle column is about 55%, and generative, I think, is about 30% of our data. Now, identity is the last piece. Identity is very similar to employee net promoter score, but it's a little richer of a measure. And it basically helps us understand why people stay at organizations. And it tells us that as we improve our technical practices, as we improve our lean and agile management practices, people want to stay working for their organization. Does this resonate with any of us? It kind of makes sense, right? Which is funny because people are like, of course this makes sense, Nicole. I'm like, yeah, but we still want to research it. We still want to study it because sometimes when I run this data, I get surprised. We test things with our research and we're like, wait, what? So sometimes we test it and we're like, yeah, this makes sense. Also, who here is trying to hire? Yeah. So this is highly correlated with employee net promoter score. We find that employees in high-performing organizations are 2.2 times more likely to recommend their organization as a great place to work. So this helps you hire. This also helps you keep your great employees. Another thing that's really interesting is that this helps combat burnout. Other research shows that this helps combat burnout. Other research out of HBR, Harvard Business Review, shows that this helps drive revenues. So it's all interrelated in really interesting ways that are good for our companies. Now, other research at Google Team Performance have found interesting things that also kind of tie into our research. So Google wanted to find what made the perfect team. You know, they thought it would be like just the right mix of technical skills, like a Node.js programmer and an R programmer and a project manager. None of that mattered at all. Zero correlation in any way across 36,000 people. The one thing that did matter, far and above, psychological safety, which is pretty similar to Westrom, right? High cooperation, risks are shared, bridging's encouraged, failure leads to inquiry. The interesting thing is that when we ran this, because we operationalized this into some items that we could try to turn into a survey, the top two, psychological safety and dependability, load with Westrom, and the bottom three, structure, clarity, meaning, and impact, load with identity. So a few interesting things. For those of us that kind of work with other areas of the business, how can we apply DevOps to the rest of the business? We can use technology to gain efficiencies, which sounds obvious to those of us in here, but how many people work with someone else in the business and they're using Excel spreadsheets for things they shouldn't be using Excel spreadsheets for? All day long and twice on Sunday, right? We can help them with this. And hopefully we can think about doing it in ways that's accessible and not intimidating. Although I still kind of love me an Excel spreadsheet some days when I get lazy, right? Pivot table is the bomb. We can work iteratively and in small batches and start with MVPs. Some of us went to university, guilty, right? I was a professor. And we think that the only thing that's going to be acceptable is that perfect end product. Help them understand that an MVP is great. Run past an MVP and see if it's a great idea. Help embrace the MVP and the proof of concept. Use monitoring to gain insight to customer and user insights early. I was talking to a customer and they were using PagerDuty to highlight and alert executives, which sounds a little crazy. Executives and marketing. But that way, the marketing team was able to pull content from the website early as soon as there was a problem. Which was great, because then everyone got visibility into issues. Also, everyone was getting visibility to the pain that the ops team traditionally was having to shoulder themselves. We can also foster a culture that prioritizes communication, learning, and driving toward a common shared goal. Finally, working across functional teams. Let everyone understand how great this promises. Okay, I'm going to close with a quote that I really love. It comes from Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit. He says, by installing a rampant innovation culture, we performed 165 experiments in the peak 3 months of tax season. So this is coming out of the United States. And I'll explain a little bit here. Our business result, conversion rate of the website is up 50%. Employee result, everyone loves it because their new ideas can make it to market. So the thing that I love here is it ties in so many themes that we've been talking about. The first one is the importance of culture and an innovation culture. They were doing 165 experiments in the peak 3 months of tax season. 5 or 10 years ago, this would have been crazy. Like, who would be doing experiments during the busiest season possible? But when else are you going to be doing experiments? You don't want to be doing experiments not in tax season, because those are not the users you want to be doing experiments on, right? That's the off case. That's the weird case. Those are the users that are submitting their taxes late and not even during a normal extension period, right? Those are the one-offs. Those are not the users that you're going to be making money off of. So it's a risky case, but that's the only time you can really test your software. Okay, and then he jumps down. He says our business result, conversion rate of the website's up 50%. So that's a big win for the company. Yay. But this is the piece I really, really love, is he talks about the employees. It's important. This is like a random quote, but it's so important to him to talk about how happy his employees are. Yes, he talks about making more money, because who doesn't love money? Yay, money. But he talks about the employees and how everyone loves it because their new ideas get to make it to market. And we can think back to the rest of this talk. This is only possible because the technical practices are there, the lean management processes are there, so that they can run experiments, because it's easy and safe to push an idea, and if the idea doesn't work, you just push new code to pull it back out. You've created a safe, innovative environment that both makes the company happy, or makes the company money, well, so makes the company happy, and makes employees happy. And it's so important that the founder highlights both of those. So here's what we've talked about. Times in IT have changed, so Nicholas Carr can suck it. Yay! We're still going to have jobs. DevOps is good for organizations. DevOps is good for technology. And what drives this change is by having all three, right? We're no longer in a situation where you can just write a check and for tech and check it off the box and be done. It's hard. It's harder, right? We all need to be involved. But when we are, amazing, amazing things happen. And we can apply these principles throughout the business to really accelerate value. So if you want to dig into any more of this, we have a ton of resources online, and they're all free. So the ROI white paper is free. We've got a case study. The last 4 years of State of DevOps reports are all free. We also have peer-reviewed research, which is free, but it's in this weird academic English that you probably don't want to read. So, and it's all online at devops-research.com. So thanks everyone for your time. I will be around all day, and I'm around at the Q&A